Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I'm bringing you part 2 of units you should consider for every chaos list. One thing I think a lot of people misunderstood about the first video is that this is going to be a series of videos, not just one lone video. So I had tons of comments of people upset that I didn't include certain units such as obliterators. So to all those people who left those comments, don't worry, there are going to be at least a few more episodes of this series, and I'm sure oblits will be talked about eventually. But for today's episode, I want to talk about Forge World units, since I've been asked many times which Forge World units are worth buying for chaos lists. So without any more delay, let's get right into it. First off, these units are not auto-include units, and you do not have to force these units into your list. Think of these videos as suggestions instead of laws. For example, from the last video, I said that Ahriman was a good pickup. But if you already have a bunch of Psykers in your army that belong to your actual faction that you're using, then you probably don't need Ahriman because you have spells covered already. These are just units that you can use if you need to cover a certain area, and if your army doesn't have that area covered already, or if you're just looking for new fancy things to buy to your army that are going to have a good result most of the time. So for the first unit in today's video, let's talk about the Hellforged Contempt Dreadnought. So with one of the more recent FAQs, Games Workshop announced that all Forge World Chaos Dreadnoughts now have the Hellbrute keyword, meaning that they get the Legion trait of your army when put in the proper detachment. This means that Forge World Dreads work extremely well in Alpha Legion and Death Guard detachments, since they can make great use of the Legion tactics, with Alpha Legion making the Dreads -1 to hit when being shot at, and the Death Guard Dreads get to move and fire their weapons without the -1 to shoot penalty. So Contemptors have multiple different loadouts you can take, but personally, I think the shooty ones are the most optimal because they work the best with those Legion traits. That doesn't mean you can't make use of the close combat versions, but the shooting versions can start to deal damage from turn 1, while the melee ones have to foot slog up the board and survive getting shot before they can even do any meaningful damage. Also, if you're playing them as Alpha Legion, you're not making the best use of your trait by getting closer to them because you're only -1 to shoot at when over 12 inches away. So if you get into close combat and they pull out, you're most likely in range of their whole army and they won't be suffering the -1, so you'll most likely die. So because of these things, I think the shooting-centric dreads are the way to go, especially because they hit on a 2+, which is basically a character's ballistic skill. Meaning with a Chaos Lord nearby to reroll ones, you should most likely have very close to 100% success rate in at least all of your hit rolls, which makes these guys really strong. For the Contemptors, the loadouts I like the most are 2 twin heavy bolters for anti-infantry like Tactical Marines, Guardsmen, or Eldar infantry, and butcher cannons for anti-elite infantry like Bikes and Terminators. Personally, I prefer the double heavy bolter because they are cheaper, meaning you have more points to spend on other units or even more Contemptors. A double twin heavy bolter Contemptor is only 137 points. That's extremely cheap for this model being as durable as it is, and also having a 2+ ballistic skill. You can also throw on a Havoc Launcher for another 11 points for just a little bit more anti-infantry. Every other option, I think, is just either too expensive or just not great in practice for various reasons, and there's too many to talk about, otherwise this video would be too long. They don't really have any great anti-tank options, but that's where the other Forge World stuff comes in, or even regular Hellbrutes. Keep in mind though, although the Forge World Dreads now have the Hellbrute keyword, they do not get access to the Fire Frenzy stratagem. With recent FAQs, the Fire Frenzy stratagem is only able to be used on actual Hellbrutes because of the wording on the stratagem is not in bold, meaning it's not using the keyword and instead talking about actual Hellbrutes. Kind of like the Killshot stratagem for Predators. It doesn't go off of the Predator keyword, and instead it just works on actual Predators. This might sound bad, but to be honest, I think Forge World Dreads would be super broken if they were allowed to use it, because they are already good enough as is, and don't necessarily need the stratagem to be viable. Contemptors are also a little more survivable than regular Dreads because they have 10 wounds and a 5+ invulnerable save. But because they have 10 wounds, that also does mean that they degrade. But because they start with a 2+ ballistic skill, this actually isn't that bad. So because of all of this, I think Contemptors are a great addition to almost any Chaos army. The next unit on the list to talk about is another Dreadnought, and that is the Hellforged Eradora Dreadnought. This is another heavy-hitting unit that is useful because of all the same reasons as the Contemptor. It gains the Legion trait because it's a Hellbrute, which makes it fit into some legions very nicely. There are a couple of ways to play this guy, and I think all of them are viable. The first way, which I think is the best way, is as a support unit to your regular Hellbrutes if you do go the route of using regular Hellbrutes as your anti-tank. You can upgrade the Eradora to have a Hellfire Veil, which gives a 5+ invulnerable save to any unit fully within 6 inches. This works great with Hellbrutes because you can easily surround the Eradora with 4 to 5 Hellbrutes to gain the invulnerable save. This will make it so that your opponent will want to target the Eradora first to get rid of the invulnerable bubble on your Hellbrutes, but he's a lot more resilient than regular Hellbrutes because he has 14 wounds with a 5+ invulnerable save of his own. If you go first, you can also put the spell Delightful Agonies on the Eradora to give him a 5+ Feel No Pain save to make him even more resilient. The next way to use this guy is just as a regular Dread that hits like a truck, just like the Contemptor. The Eradora has a 2+ ballistic skill just like the Contemptor, so they are great for shooting. They also have a rule that they can get +1 to hit against units with the fly keyword, so essentially it ignores the -1 on most flyers, meaning it will still hit on a 2+. And with a Chaos Lord around for rerolls of 1s, you're again at almost 100% success rate for your hit rolls. The loadouts I like on this guy is either the Butcher Cannon with the Hellfire Veil if you're going the Hellbrute support route, and if you want to use him as a heavy support, then I like the Butcher Cannon or Ectoplasma Battery alongside a Greater Havoc Launcher and Heavy Bolters. The reason I wouldn't want to take the Ectoplasma Battery or the Greater Havoc Launcher on the support version is because the Ectoplasma Battery is only a 24-inch range, while your Hellbrutes with Twin Last Cannons and Missile Launchers have 48-inch range and suffer -1 to hit if they move unless they are Death Guard. So I guess this doesn't really apply to the Death Guard versions. So this means you'll most likely want to move your Eradora up while your other Hellbrutes want to stay back because their range is so much longer, so the synergy isn't really there. Because with the 24-inch range Ectoplasma Battery, you're going to be moving your Eradora up the field, while your Hellbrutes normally want to sit in the back with a Chaos Lord in a castle, so they can just shoot stuff all game. So if you do this, that'll bring your 5+ invulnerable bubble with the Eradora, meaning you'll have to move your Hellbrutes with him in order to keep them in the bubble. This works with Death Guard because you don't get the -1 to hit when you move, but with Alpha Legion, it still kind of works, but if you can shoot at maximum efficiency by not moving, then you're always going to want to opt to do that. So instead, if you're going to use them as a support, the Butcher Cannon has a 36-inch range, so more often than not with good positioning, you won't have to move the Eradora or the Hellbrutes to put in some work. The reason I also don't take the Greater Havoc Launcher on the Eradora if it's supporting is because I'm already investing a lot of points for this support model, and it's most likely going to be targeted first because of the buff it gives to the other Hellbrutes. So there's no point in spending even more points on it just in case you don't go first and if it dies turn 1. I don't like putting too many eggs in one basket, so to speak. But if you want it just as a regular heavy support and you don't want to pay for the Hellfire Veil, then give it whatever you want because it definitely will put in some work. The last unit I'm going to talk about today is another Dreadnought, and that's the Hellforged Leviathan Dreadnought. Just like the other two Dreads, the Leviathan makes great use of the Alpha Legion or Death Guard Legion traits, and it also hits on a 2+ when shooting. This guy has 14 wounds and a 5+ invulnerable save just like the Eradora, but this time around the Leviathan has a regular 2+ save, which really boosts its survivability against weapons that only have a -1 or -2 for their AP. Also, it's toughness 8, so it's more resilient against strength 8 weapons like Dark Lances from Jakari or Missile Launchers from Space Marines. The loadout I'd give this guy is 2 Butcher Cannon arrays, which are double the shots of the Butcher Cannons that the Contemptor uses. The 2 Butcher Cannon arrays equals out to 16 strength 8 shots at -1 AP and 2 damage. And remember, you're hitting on 2s because of its awesome ballistic skill. Combine this with a Chaos Lord in your castle, and again, you have almost a 100% success rate for your hits. It also comes with 2 Heavy Flamers that normally won't be used because you want to keep him back to shoot with him, but they are still there kind of as a charge deterrent, and also you have to pay for them, so they're there. Personally, I wouldn't take Leviathans because I think they are too many points for my liking. They are definitely worth every point spent, but I don't like putting too many eggs in one basket. And the Contemptor is 329 points for the loadout I like, compared to 137 points for the loadout I like on the Contemptor, meaning I could bring 2 Contemptors for the price of 1 Leviathan with some points to spare. But the Leviathan is still on the list because there is no denying that it is a beast and can still put in work if brought in your list. That about covers everything for part 2 of the units you should consider for every Chaos list. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content. And if you're already subscribed but would like to help support the channel even further, you can do so on Patreon. For a pledge of $4, you get exclusive access to the Almost Pro Gaming Patreon Discord channel, where you can talk to either myself or other Almost Pro gamers and get help building lists, or even just general advice and tactics. We have a great little community going, and it's gaining new members every week. So there's lots of people to discuss with and also play games with on Tabletop Simulator if you would like. If that sounds interesting to you, there is a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming!